And welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, joined by the new dad, Justin Lowery, back again. Justin, after a little bit of technical difficulties, we've got everything squared away. You look better than ever.
Well, thank you.
I think that you had told me earlier this week you were actually excited about WWE for the first time in several months because you said it's, really on the road to WrestleMania. I know that they come up with all these cliches, whatnot. That being said, a pay-per-view that you and I both thought really didn't have a lot of build going into it, maybe not a lot of anticipation, I think in key aspects really delivered. Elimination Chamber is probably as good as what we could have realistically hoped for.
Yeah, I thought there was some entertaining matches. I thought there was some good storytelling. Overall, I enjoyed the show.
Now, one of the interesting things about Elimination Chamber that I thought was refreshing is the fact that it didn't go 4 hours. It barely went over 3 hours, and with only 7 matches on the card, one of which got bumped to the pre-show, it seemed like a good length. It didn't feel like it was exhausting for fans to watch the entirety of it.
But yeah, that's a plus. I mean, and I like it ending a little after 10. Starting it at 7. Somebody who gets up earlier for work. I appreciate being able to go to bed at a better hour. So I mean, I really enjoyed that.
And some of it, we'll run down how we did with the predictions. I don't want to spoil it, but neither one of us were terrific with the predictions. I think they threw some curveballs, and you and I both thought, it was sort of going to be like a bland show with nothing real significant happening other than we knew there was going to be the first ever women's tag team champions crowned. But they kind of threw some curveballs, and ultimately I think what they did maybe sets up for a little bit more exciting road to WrestleMania over the next 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, I think, we're seeing, like I've said before, the effects of another promotion getting ready to start up and the ratings dropping. I think there's finally starting to try different things here, throwing a little curveballs at the fans to get the excitement level up. And for me personally, it's working. We'll see. I saw the Raw ratings jumped a decent amount for Monday after Chamber. So I don't know if that's a reflection on what happened at Elimination Chamber or just a reflection of, the road to WrestleMania. More people are going to tune in for the next 2 months.
And the fact that there's not Monday Night Football or, anything else really at this time to compete with, that also helps. So let's take a look at our predictions for the Elimination Chamber. And I mentioned neither one of us did particularly well, but as you could see, for the second straight month, it was Justin Lowery who got the better of the predictions. He was correct on 4 of 7. I was right on 3 of 7. So Justin at least batting over 500. We were both really off on some of these matches. We both missed the Bobby Lashley-Lio Rush handicap against Finn Balor, in which Finn Balor became the new IC champion. We also missed on the SmackDown Tag Team Championship match as the Usos claimed the title for the 6th time, knocking off Shane McMahon and The Miz. Baron Corbin, with some help from friends, knocked off Braun Strowman. That's one that I really didn't like the outcome of, but we'll get into that. And then, Justin, the one that you did get correctly that I missed was the first ever Women's Tag Team Championships crowned inside the chamber. We both knew it was going to come down to Bayley and Sasha. Would they win, or would the bigger story be them not winning? Well, they decided to go with the route of them winning and, I guess, fulfilling their dreams, and it certainly was an emotional moment. That kicked off the chamber. I actually was pleasantly surprised by how that match unfolded. Just to be honest with you, I thought it was just going to be too many bodies in there. I thought it was going to be sloppy and really kind of hard to plan out. But in the end, I thought it kind of delivered. Even though I'm not particularly huge fans of some of the participants, it seemed like everyone, including Nia Jax, played a decent role in the match and making it successful.
Yeah, I thought it was a good match. I thought everybody played their part well. They were pretty much made up tag teams. Because there's not really tag teams in the women's division. So I was okay, with the participants. It made sense. The oddest team was Naomi and Carmella, because that just really came out of nowhere.
But how funny was it, by the way? They kick off the show with both of them being in the news for negative reasons in the days leading up to the show.
Yeah, I noticed some boos for Carmella when she came out, but that story's unfolding daily. it is different. When they were the first team eliminated, I actually thought, well, that makes sense. Both got in the news for negative reasons, so it makes sense that they would, get them out of there first. That's what led me to believe the Usos winning even was more surprising to me. We'll get to that, but that was actually quite shocking to me. But back to the match, I thought it was a good match. I don't think I'm going to remember that match as like one of the all-time great moments in history, but I think the right team won. The right girls won. I think out of everybody in that match, those two deserved it more than anybody.
The one thing, and I know people might get on me for this, the one thing that bothered me is Bayley afterwards when I think it was Charlie Caruso, whoever was doing the interview, Bayley's like, Sasha, you say something. You say something. And she did it twice. And it's like, come on, I understand you're emotional, but sometimes that leads to the best promos. I have always kind of viewed Bayley as a step below the other three with Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky. And, as she's very good in the ring. She has a good character. I think she's a good person. But stuff like that, man, it's hard for me to say like that is a main event caliber when, she's basically turning down a chance to cut a promo after winning the first ever championships.
Yeah, and to go with your point, you would figure they knew they were going to do a post-match interview. It wasn't like this is spur of the moment, hey, you're on the spot, go. I mean, I'm pretty sure they knew after the match they were going to talk, and she still, didn't have anything to say. So, yeah, I found that a bit weird, but I'm not going to harp on it.
So that was the women's match. That kicked off the show. It ended with the men's chamber. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. I thought it was disappointing for the early portions, and I thought really the other 4 participants who weren't amongst the final 2, they were sort of afterthoughts. I don't remember anyone really looking great. Now, Jeff Hardy did a very impressive swanton. That stood out. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, this was really a story about 2 competitors. It was about Kofi Kingston and Daniel Bryan. And a week ago, I don't think there was any thought that we'd be talking about that being how it unfolded, but that's exactly how it turned out, that Kofi was the fan favorite, and really, I think getting as good of a reaction as a fan favorite as anyone we've seen in the past handful of months. Now, Kofi came up short. You and I both knew he was going to come up short, but there was a split second, Justin, at least for me, where I actually believed, will he win this title tonight? Like, it doesn't make sense, but they had me. That's a sign of a good match. And I thought the exact same at Survivor Series when Lesnar went against Bryan. I really thought for a split second, maybe Daniel Bryan will win this. I think there's something about his storytelling and with some of the near falls where that's when you know it's a good match. When you know deep down what the result's going to be, but you suspend that belief for a couple moments.
Yeah, I think that's just more of the fan in us.
Right.
Yeah, could there have been a title switch? If anything, they could have pulled it off, and then he dropped it right back at Fastlane, in a couple of weeks, and still would have had their WrestleMania, match or whatever they want. Kofi's getting awesome reactions. It seems to be kind of out of nowhere. The crowd has really gotten behind him and responded, and I don't think they planned on having Kofi face Daniel Bryan at Fastlane for the title, and I think they responded to the crowd's reaction to him, so they're giving him this match.
Which is a great thing that they're going on the fly.
Right. And I think that's what more people want, is to let the crowd dictate, what they do instead of telling us what we're going to
The
like.
crowd and the fact that Kofi's delivered both in the gauntlet and in the chamber.
That goes to the thing of Vince always saying the wrestler's got to grab the brass ring. Well, he's doing that, so you're rewarding him. That's what people want to see. Me and you, I know we talked about this, and we were in, somewhat of a disagreement yesterday. I mean, I'm open to the idea of Kofi facing Bryan at WrestleMania because I think the storyline, if it's written as such, they can do it. If the crowd really gets behind him and they go another way, I could see that match being pooped on at WrestleMania.
Would you book Kofi and Daniel Bryan if you were making that decision right now at WrestleMania for the title?
I would have it on the table. I would not have anything written in stone because actually I have no idea where they're going to go with Bryan.
I don't know that they know.
Right, and that's why I think everything's on the table. I read today that the new rumor is Kevin Owens and Bryan at WrestleMania, with Kevin Owens returning to feud with Bryan over the title.
I heard that. I have some issues with that as well. I think, one, the fans would dig that, but ultimately I want something that makes a little bit more sense.
Well, that's why the only thing that now to me that makes sense would be the Kofi storyline. How it's organic and it's building. His 11-year struggle to get on top. He's so close. The crowd is gaining momentum for him. It could be a big moment, and they're having great matches.
Right.
You know, you could do something at Fastlane, hold back a little bit, and have Mania be that, you know, triumphant moment for him. I know you talked about, and I agree with you, not liking rematches at WrestleMania.
Because we know they're doing it at Fastlane, unless they decide to somehow make it they could throw Rowan in there if they really wanted to, but it seems like they're going with the one-on-one match.
Right, which is fine, but maybe Rowan helps Bryan win, and somehow it helps, you know, a stipulation match at WrestleMania, something different. You know, I mean, I don't know where else you can go with it. I want to keep it open, though. I want the idea of Kofi on the table.
Did you watch all of SmackDown?
Yes.
Okay, so here's my concern, and I guess if I'm concerned about it and I would be upset if it happens, then maybe it is, you know, a good thing to get that reaction. I think that Woods and Big E might turn on him.
That is true. Now, why can't...
They went, like, over the top putting Kofi over, and
right.
I think it could lead to a turn.
Why can't he win the title? Then on the episode of SmackDown, pull like an Orton. You know, Kofi celebrating with his guys in the ring. Not that he gets a thumb down, but, you know, they're celebrating with him, and, you know, they attack him. There's your breakup of the New Day, and Kofi becomes even, I think, more of a monster face, and Big E and Xavier go a different direction, become heels, and gives them a little fresh character development.
Do you feel like SmackDown would be okay with Kofi as the champion and Big E presumably as the challenger? It just, to me, the point I made about WrestleMania is I feel like they don't think that's a big enough match, and they want a bigger match with a bigger name, even if it's not one that's going to be as good in the ring.
I would maybe agree on paper. I mean, I think hardcore fans would like it. I get it where it's not a huge match, but that match is going to be so far down the card, behind the Women's Championship match, behind the Universal Championship match, probably even behind the Shane McMahon match, because you know how Vince really loves to promote his son, and so that's probably going to be The Miz. That might be the fourth match on the card.
Do we think that Taker's going to work this year?
No, from all accounts, he's kind of like done with the WWE. He's taken independent bookings.
Yeah, I sort of for the first time get the feeling that he's not going to have a match, but I'm going to say it's strange because, like, wouldn't they give him something as like a send-off?
Well, I thought the last couple WrestleManias have been send-offs.
Right, but then he wrestled over in Saudi Arabia, in like November?
He's one of those guys. It seems like you're not going to get a proper send off with him. He just kind of hung around, and then he's just going to disappear. He'll probably show up again for some appearance or something, but he seems to be doing his own thing.
If I were to guess right now, I would think there's three more likely opponents for Daniel Bryan. One being John Cena, and I think that one, truthfully, they do have sort of a built-in storyline, even though, to your point, it might really hurt the heel run of Daniel Bryan. I think two faces who would work, or like long-time underdogs that the fans would rally behind because it's sort of like a, turn back the clock. That would be Jeff Hardy and Rey Mysterio. I think that all three of them are probably more likely than Kofi Kingston. Let's be honest, like, it doesn't matter necessarily what you and I think. They want to try to appeal to a bigger fan base, and I think all three of those guys are bigger names. That might be how they look at it. And let's be honest, Mysterio's been great since he's come back, and Jeff Hardy gets a good reaction.
But to the mainstream public, are they really much bigger names? Maybe Mysterio, but I don't think Jeff Hardy is that much bigger to the mainstream audience. I mean, if you ask somebody who wasn't really a wrestling fan of Jeff Hardy is, I don't know if they really...
If they watched 15 years ago and everyone did, they certainly would know him.
Right, but then, oh, dude, that guy's still wrestling? Didn't he die?
Right, but we know that they love bringing back the guys that, are a little past their prime, or, that's for WrestleMania. That's what WrestleMania has proven to be over the past decade.
How about, like, stay with Kofi? I'm going to, play devil's advocate here. Do the match, and maybe many people are like, who's this guy? But once they see the crowd reaction to him, watch him have a great match with Daniel Bryan, maybe they walk away going, oh, man, I love that Kofi Kingston. Right,
and that is how you build guys to superstardom. I get that, But I just know, reality-wise, I feel like that's not going to what. And let's be honest, Kofi's getting a good opportunity just getting this main event title match
Right.
at a pay-per-view.
And I mean, actually, Kofi might be known because the New Day has been over ESPN a bunch over the last couple of years. And
As far as a group, with the Shield no longer existing, they're the biggest group, tag team or trio or whatever in the company.
And the fact is, Fastlane's another 2 weeks. So between Fastlane and Mania, what is it, like 4 weeks? That's not really a long time to build a new feud for Daniel Bryan. I mean, for a title, that's going to be very quickly.
I agree. That being said, I think that's just a bigger issue with them having 2 pay-per-views between now and then.
Well, I agree.
Couple of the other things I wanted to touch on quickly, and they sort of translate into what happened on Raw as well. Becky Lynch comes out. I personally actually did not expect her there, just because I figured they literally just suspended her. Maybe they'll keep her off for a couple weeks, but Becky comes out, and Justin, I saw you tweeted you really loved how she sort of just went nuts. I mean, let's break it down. She attacked Charlotte Flair and just brutally beat her, and then she gave it even worse to Ronda Rousey. And I guess I didn't see it when I was watching, but I guess Ronda's head was cut open from it. Now, those are not probably legitimate crutches. They might have been, plastic or whatever, but it obviously was enough to do damage to both of them. That was kind of cool, but the whole thing, to me, just feels like, do you really need to do all of this and jump through all these loops, or all these hoops, I should say, with Becky not being in the match, not being on the roster, but she's still going to do it anyway, and now we're going to have to figure out how she's going to come back. I still would have went a little more straightforward, but you're digging how it unfolded on Sunday.
Oh, yeah. The other thing I found laughable is, for someone who's suspended, security really let her in there, huh? I mean...
The announcers brought that up, and they didn't really have an explanation.
Someone had to go like, hey, we need to say something. This is ridiculous. She walks through the crowd, jumps the barricade, goes in the ring, beats up Charlotte and Ronda, and then security shows up, 10 minutes after the fact? I did find that extremely funny. But I'm digging it. She's basically playing the female Stone Cold right now. The way she was getting arrested, hands behind her back, walking out with the face up in the air. It reminded me of Austin back in the day.
Which raises the question, why didn't she lose by passing out when she lost to Asuka at the Rumble? That would have really been the Steve Austin type.
Yeah, I don't know why they chose that. That's a little fishy, especially if you're just going to have Asuka get pinned by Mandy Rose on an episode of SmackDown. I'm enjoying the storyline. To me, this is my favorite storyline in the company right now. And off the bat, I did want a singles match between Becky and Ronda, and I still would have preferred that. But I'm still digging the inclusion of Charlotte. I think it's working. I think Charlotte's playing her role perfectly.
Because she's the true heel in your estimation.
Yeah,
okay.
And she's doing a great job at it. And I'm looking forward to the match, and I expect these ladies to go out there and really prove to them, the world that they deserve, the main event WrestleMania.
The more I've thought about it, based on what you said, and looking at the entire landscape, I think it is a way to protect Ronda a little bit, because one, she doesn't have to necessarily lose the match to lose the title. Two, she doesn't have to get booed out of the building because there's a bigger heel. That being said, I think that some of the fans are still going to cheer Charlotte if her and Ronda have an exchange at Mania for, a couple seconds. But it doesn't make Ronda look as bad.
And let's not forget, Ronda's only been wrestling now for a little over a year. To put her in a main event singles match, she's still a little green.
Well, we saw on Monday, she completely whiffed on one of her punches to Ruby Riott. It just...
So putting her in the ring with 2 extremely talented wrestlers will help kind of cover up her weaknesses too.
The other thing that I wanted to touch on quickly at Elimination Chamber was the Intercontinental title match. Now, we both picked Lashley along with Lio Rush. Finn won the match. He pinned Lio, which, of course, that was really going to be the only way that this one unfolded, was some sort of miscommunication between Bobby and Lio. So Finn becomes the Intercontinental Champion. This is just a month after he challenged for the Universal title and had a great showing. Is this a good sign for Finn Balor? Because it is a secondary title. You made the point that it's really the primary title. But I think once Brock Lesnar loses, hopefully, fingers crossed at WrestleMania, it will go back to being a clear secondary title. But at least he has something.
Right. And looking back on it, I'm actually disappointed that I picked Lashley because the inclusion of Lio Rush being in the match, especially being their first match, should have been a heads up that he was going to pin Lio Rush to get the title off Lashley. Then why else is Lio Rush in that match other than to take the pin? So looking back, I should have picked something different.
Don't beat yourself up, Justin, because I could still go back and say, well, they didn't want another just regular singles match. They wanted to try to make it a little more interesting because there wasn't a great anticipation for those two going at it.
Yes, but I'm hoping for Finn it's something good. I mean, he won the Universal Championship. Unfortunately, got hurt, had to give it up, and never really got a major push again since he came back. I would think he would be a marketing dream for them. I don't know why he doesn't use the Demon more often, because you would think that's a very marketing savvy thing to do with kids and face paint and masks. I'm shocked we don't see it more often.
I think how they did it in NXT was the right way.
Right.
Every 3 months.
Right, like every big pay-per-view match or something. I would think it's a big money maker. I'm shocked that they're not doing that with him. I see money in him. I hope that he has a decent long reign. I hope this leads into a really nice WrestleMania match. He wrestled for the Intercontinental title last year.
He did.
On WrestleMania. Now this year he's going in as a champion. So, I guess it's a step up.
Well, when I had Rennie on, he was high on Finn. And, of course, he said, Finn looked really good against Brock Lesnar. I hope they do something with that. And I said, well, what do you expect? And he said, well, I'm not really sure what they're going to do for him over the next couple months, but I want him to be maybe the first in line to challenge Seth Rollins when Rollins wins the Universal title. That might not happen now. Finn might be kind of a little bit below that because it is probably going to become a secondary title. But if he can do to the IC title what Seth Rollins did, or anyone that consistently defends it and puts on great matches, which seems to be his MO, then I think it's only going to help, because with Ambrose and then it hasn't meant much over the past couple of months.
I want to make the you say it's going to drop to a secondary title. I do think it's held higher than you're giving it credit for. The U.S. title is an afterthought. That gets defended on a pre-show. That doesn't get defended at all. The IC title has been the main title on Raw now for quite some time.
I agree, but did it feel at all significant when Dean Ambrose had it?
Well, I think it more had to do with Dean. When Seth had it, I thought it felt significant.
Did it feel significant when Bobby Lashley won it? That's, so I agree, it has to be the right person with that title.
And I'm hoping Finn keeps, it depends on the feud, too. A lot of it is the feud for it. You can't, the Lashley doesn't do much. Drew McIntyre or Baron Corbin, you need something a little bit more.
Let's talk about what happened on Raw, and it really was right from the get-go that you were pretty excited about Raw. They decide the 6 NXT superstars they called up about 2 months ago, well, that wasn't quite enough. They needed to bring some other new blood to the Raw and Smackdown weekly programming. So Triple H, at the beginning of the show, says we're going to have Aleister Black, we're going to have Johnny Gargano, we're going to have Tommaso Ciampa, and we will also have Ricochet. Makes sense for those guys. I think that, they're probably all ready. Are they making a say, Justin? I know you're getting really excited thinking about these newcomers, but are they making the same mistake that they've made before, where they don't really build these guys up? They just throw them on there and hope that fans might care.
Yeah, you were not at home for the start of Raw, and I remember I texted you saying, "Hey, Raw actually has me hooked for the night." And I guess you read stuff because you just want NXT guys. And I said,
well,
yeah.
So WWE sort of spoiled it on purpose.
Yeah.
They said these guys are there. Why are they here? And it was at 5 o'clock or something like that.
Right, and I think they wanted people to tune in. And when I saw that too, and I'm like, whoa, and it did strike my interest as a fan. And first thing, Triple H comes out and he put it out there like these 4 are coming, on the show. I did not expect them to be on SmackDown. That was a nice, pleasant surprise, too. But my worry is Vince apparently just made that decision that afternoon. Triple H didn't even know.
I heard that.
And apparently, did you read Raw was, being rewrote, as Raw was happening. It was so much confusion that they were just going by the seat of their pants. It sounded like very WCW-like.
Which I thought the show played out decently. It wasn't a disaster. They didn't have any segments that were like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? But when you see, so first off, I'm making some headway on NXT, but I'm still back like towards the end of the summer. Ciampa's been their biggest heel for a long time.
Yes.
Johnny Gargano became a heel fairly recently.
Yes.
Those guys have played faces this week. So even if you are a huge fan of the company and you watch NXT, are you supposed to cheer for these guys now because they're going against the Revival and the Bar? It's kind of confusing because fans don't know how to react. Either they're unfamiliar with them or they're seeing them in a completely different role. That, like, how do you not boo Ciampa after watching him for the past year?
Well, I think no matter, even if you're a heel on NXT and you've watched NXT, if they show up on SmackDown or Raw unexpectedly, you're going to get a cheer. You know, people are just like, oh, this is cool. Like, there's your cheer. It's like when a heel comes back from an injury and they've been a bad guy their whole time. Like, you're going to get cheered at least for a week or two before that goes.
Well, not in Lafayette or wherever they were at Monday.
Well, that's another thing. That crowd, I don't think I've ever heard a crowd so quiet in my life. Like, there was no boos, there was no cheers.
It wasn't just for a match or two. It was for like
the whole show,
an hour straight.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, like, why are you there? Like if
they're like golf fans or something.
Yeah, it was like a Japanese crowd. If you ever watch like New Japan, those crowds are very quiet.
But they also get impressed by like some good sequences of where the
right.
ooh,
Like,
you know.
Oh, and then, yeah, like these guys is like, oh, like this. It was. If they wanted to do that, they should have waited till they were in a bigger city, a bigger wrestling market. Because then, you know, if the crowd cheers and gets into it at home, you're like, oh man, this is awesome.
And the next night was a lot better on SmackDown.
Oh, well, yeah, the crowd. Well, they were in New Orleans. They were in a bigger city, and there was better reactions to those guys. Yeah.
So let's talk about how this unfolded. So I mentioned Gargano and Ciampa against the Revival. Those guys certainly have great chemistry. The match was terrific. Again, it was just lacking that, you know, like the energy. But I think those four guys did their job. Now, that being said, if you're watching at home and you're unfamiliar, you're going to say, oh, well, you know, like fans didn't really care there. Should I? I thought Ricochet had a nice little gig because he was paired with a guy that people love against a group that people hate. So that's already built in to get a reaction. And Ricochet, of course, did what he always does, which is fly through the air. The one that I thought was sort of peculiar is Aleister Black against Elias. And Aleister won, and he basically broke Elias's jaw with the black mass. But that's one where it's like, you probably shouldn't have Elias lose that one cleanly to a guy coming up, because you already have a guy that needs elevated in Elias. It seems like you do more harm than good. That being said, did this accomplish what it needed to with these NXT guys? And how is this going to play out over the next handful of months? Because with at least Gargano and Ciampa, they have titles in NXT.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, I'm thinking big picture. There's been rumors that Fox wants more WWE programming, even like on Fox Sports 1 and stuff. Do you think NXT could then go to Fox Sports 1, like starting in October, November? And they know this, so now they're getting their titles on regular programming to promote the NXT brand. Because if you notice, Triple H, as he botched his opening and he fixed it, and talking about NXT being the third brand.
Well, if that was SmackDown, they would have edited it out, of course.
Right.
Or a taped SmackDown, I should say, because we saw that firsthand.
I found that peculiar, and I'm like, I wonder if you end up seeing NXT on Fox Sports 1, at the end of the year.
At that point, different guys, though. I mean, we can agree that those four are going to be on the main roster.
But they're they want to promote more widely the NXT brand, so it has value when it goes to cable. I'm wondering if that's what the idea is behind this.
So I was talking to a couple people, and I said, the main roster, the issue's never been a lack of talent. Getting more talent's never going to be a bad thing, but I don't think it solves the issues. The issues are with the creative, with how the promos are laid out, with the predictability, with the short-term booking at the expense of long-term logic. So does this really make a difference on Raw or SmackDown? And what is going to happen with these guys leading up to WrestleMania? These four in particular.
Well, right. Do these guys get on the WrestleMania card, or they'll stay on the TakeOver card, and it just provides more promotion for the TakeOver? I don't know. I don't think they know. Like we talked about, Vince has decided that Monday afternoon that these guys were going to appear on the show, and I mean, okay. I mean, I enjoyed it, but what is the long-term goal? Hey, remember EC3 and his call-up?
So I was going to say, on SmackDown, I thought it was more problematic than on Raw because you have so much time on Raw that you can use these guys and still feature your complimentary stars. On SmackDown, what was really on SmackDown? There was the six-man in the tag team match to close out the show. Those were the six guys that were in the chamber. There was the Aleister Black match. There was the tag team match with Gargano and Ciampa. There was the Ricochet match against Eric Young, of all people. And then there was, like, I think, two other segments. So really, regular SmackDown stars, guys like Mysterio and so on and so forth, nowhere to be found because there's not enough time.
Right. There's just not enough time to get these guys in. Now, that's the thing. We've talked about WWE, they have so much talent on their roster that there's not enough room for everybody. Like, okay, you put those four guys on at the expense of other guys that deserve to be on the show, too. Like, there's just an abundance of riches. It's unbelievable.
Right. EC3 was one of the first guys that's like, man, he wasn't on, but they didn't have really time for anyone on SmackDown. Now, you can fit him on Raw, of course. But
that is, they just, like, called up some NXT guys, and before they can even find any footing, they're bringing other guys on. So that means EC3 is already dead in the water.
They need to establish a show and face or heel, because I don't know. I mean, we said Nikki Cross has already flipped back and forth. Okay. Yeah. EC3 seems like he should be a heel. They may be making him a face, but why is he a face? We don't know. You know, they just... And same thing with Ciampa and Gargano. Are they going to be faces? If so, then that's a waste of the best heel in NXT in a long time.
Right. They don't know. So who the hell knows?
One thing that did make SmackDown was the women's champion making her triumphant return, Asuka. And this is, really the last regular thing that I want to talk about with programming this week in WWE, because you made a point saying this was a joke. It was. Asuka loses to Mandy Rose. Now, is there a way that you can maybe book Mandy Rose getting one up on Asuka? Yes, because I think that's what they're going to do for the title match at Fastlane. But to have her get a relatively clean victory, let's be honest, like, there wasn't the outside interference. Yes, she, faked an injury, but it was basically her outsmarting Asuka and then getting a fairly clean victory. Have Mandy win by count out or something because Sonya or Lacey Evans, who came down, interfered. Don't do it how they did it, because it's right back to Asuka from last summer where she's not special anymore.
I can't even say outsmarted. I mean, we all knew she was faking. Actually, I think it makes Asuka look really stupid.
Right.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. I mean, I understand they're clearly setting up for the match at Fastlane. They want to give Mandy Rose as a threat, but she's not a threat. If anything, have the ref back be turned, and then she gets hit behind with a chair, something that's more believable.
Right.
Than, I'm faking an injury. I'm going to push you into the ropes kind of awkwardly, and I'm just going to roll you up. Yay! Come on now. Asuka was off. She would have been better off sitting off SmackDown again.
I agree.
That was bad. Very, very bad. And it shows that they really have no idea what to do with that title since Charlotte or Becky aren't in the picture.
And that was my argument all along about why Charlotte needed to be against Asuka. And I think if they had gone that direction, they wouldn't make Asuka look stupid like this. They would care more about her. And they would care more about making that title seem significant. That being said, whatever. It seems like Fastlane's going to have some matches that are just going to be, one-offs, kind of to your point. I think Kofi and Bryan, and I think Mandy Rose and Asuka might both fit that billing.
I just want to say one thing real quick. Instead of if you want to throw Mandy Rose or Fastlane, what they need to do then for WrestleMania is have an NXT call-up for the women's match. Kairi Sane, anything. There's better.
Yeah, well, I think Shayna Baszler would probably be the one that they would go with.
There's better options right now in NXT for Asuka than there is on SmackDown.
Right, I agree. Truthfully, Naomi is probably the only one in the ring that could go toe-to-toe with her, and I'm not sure that that's what they consider a big money match at this point. Anything else that stood out from this week, Justin? I think it was a step in the right direction for WWE.
I just want to say, going back to the Usos winning, apparently they still haven't signed a contract. They're up in April. I'm going to guess Vince really wants them to re-sign to give them.
And he doesn't care if they get arrested along the way.
And, usually if you're on TMZ with a mugshot, Vince gets really angry. But then he still lets them win the titles. he must really not want them to go to somewhere else. I just found that I was shocked by that. That was the only other thing that really stood out to me this week.
All right, Justin, that's going to do it for another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Now, I teased this last week. I'm going to really try to make a special presentation of our 1-year anniversary. That's upcoming before WrestleMania. So get ready for that, Justin. We're going to have a lot of fun upcoming for that. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter. It is 5-Star Pod Wrestle. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, like it, check out the old videos. And as always, you can catch us again next week right here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.